Okay, we're back. RB and I, we were absent for 1 week due to whatever circumstances. But anyway, we're back here. I'm George. RB is here. You know, about a couple of days ago, I received a message at LinkedIn from a student of mine from way back 2003. And that student worked his way up the ranks until he became a director of a company, of a BPO. But unfortunately, due to you know how it is nowadays, a lot of them were laid off, probably because of AI. That's one huge reason nowadays why a lot of people from the BPOs get laid off. Anyway, so he messaged me and said he watches our vlogs. He somehow learns a lot of things from those, and he asked me if he could share it with his colleagues, especially those who lost their jobs, and maybe they could get some tips from us on how to go about applying for other jobs and showing the best of themselves in those other jobs, like how to show gravitas, etc., etc. So I was thinking maybe we could discuss that now. um, from your point of view, RV, what is it that makes a candidate click? I'm sure you've given pointers or training to recruiters and stuff. So what is it that makes them uh, somehow spot a really good candidate for a job?
No, actually, George, I realize it's just so difficult to be the one who's answering questions.
Mhm.
Because, and I can answer it two ways. The first way is as a person who's intuitive, I think I need to see some sort of a X factor
Uh-huh.
because if I'm interviewing five people, I can't even begin to consider the one that I don't remember. So the
Mhm.
person has to stand out in some way. But at the same time, having been trained on how to do interviews, I know that there are some people who don't interview very, very well. They probably will
Mhm.
not be impressive
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, they should be able to do the job.
Uh-huh.
And so the logical side of me will say the person who can demonstrate some actual practical experience of having done the job that I am trying to fill
Mhm.
is also something worth considering. But what
You know,
about
it's
you,
so
George? Like,
I
what
don't
do
know.
you?
It's so funny. Still in another BPO we worked in, I was asked to train the recruitment team. All right, and of course, one of the things I did was to observe them while they were interviewing applicants. Now, this is the funny part. Um, I enter a room, so there was this interviewer, the recruiter, and a candidate. So I quietly slip into the room, go to a far corner, and sit down. The recruiter saw me and started shaking and started stuttering. And she she speaks so well. She normally is very confident. I just don't know what happened to her. So it went on and on until you know what happened. The candidate said, "Take it easy. It's okay."
Natakot sa'yo, George, yung interviewer. Bak-
And of course, after the interview, she came over to me and started jabbing at me. Why'd you enter this room? And I said, I was just trying to observe what happened to you. She got nervous. She panicked, and it was the candidate who tried
Good.
to somehow calm her down.
Uh,
Well, in all fairness to the candidate, he eventually rose up the ranks too and became an executive of another company. But that's how it is. Sometimes it happens to the best of them, and I thought she was one of the best recruiters that time. Anyway, as far as interviews are concerned, I always tell the interviewee or the candidate one thing: don't be afraid to ask questions. Why? I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Harvey. You go for an interview for a job, and then you don't even know a single thing about that company. Would you be impressed?
No, like I would think, hey, this person just tried to walk in here
Uh-huh.
without researching anything
Uh-huh.
about the company.
But if the candidate seems to know a lot of about the company, what would you think? That he's a stalker?
That they at least tried to figure out if this company will be good for them, and
Mm-hmm.
they probably saw an initial match between what the company does and what they can offer.
Mm-hmm. All right. And you said there's such a thing as an X factor. How do you figure that out?
Well, a lot of things. Like, number one is they can look you in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
They can be very direct. You know that they're not beating around the bush.
Mm-hmm.
They have real life experiences to talk about. Maybe they're not uttering a lot. They don't have a lot of dead air,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you can see the sparkle in their eyes. Like they're really excited to be there. They're not afraid of you.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, they probably should be dressed at least decently.
Mm-hmm.
Not the kind that looks like they just came from the gym or something like
Okay.
that.
Let me interject. What is decently nowadays? I mean, I might be out of touch already. So I want to know what is an accepted dress code for these kinds of things.
I think for guys, it would be a shirt with a collar. It doesn't have to be
Uh-huh.
long sleeves nowadays. Like it could be
Uh-huh.
short sleeves,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely not a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the pants, for guys at least, probably slacks instead of jeans. Definitely not torn jeans or shorts. And then, like you said, shoes, leather shoes, not sneakers. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
not. What do you call those things? Crocs
Crocs. All right.
or sandals. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
not sandals. You don't want to see someone's feet.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So that's the official dress code nowadays.
Yeah. Like what about for
Neckties.
women?
Neckties are out.
They don't have to, especially if it's not a bank, George. As a matter of fact, it comes across as pretentious sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Um, sp- I guess I'm speaking for companies that are a little bit more tech oriented. But of
Uh-huh.
course, if it's a bank, those traditional companies, they should wear a necktie.
Because I still wear neckties when I do training. And
Absolutely, yeah.
sometimes I wonder if I'm too overdressed or
Oh
pretentious.
no, I mean, if you're the speaker, George, it's always good. It's always a good idea, they say, to dress a notch higher than your audience. So I guess
Mhm.
that works for you.
I remember that time I gave a talk to one of the companies you worked in, and there was this lady who also gave a talk on dressing up,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right? And she cited me as an example that my necktie matched my shirt and
Wow,
whatever. I didn't even realize they matched, but she said they matched.
wow. So you have good taste.
Well, I don't know. Do you call that monochromatic? I always make sure my preferences and combinations are spot on. Even a tone. My color,
Really?
yeah, that's crazy, but that's how I am. Like I wear slippers that match my shorts and my shirt, even if it's just a t-shirt or whatever. Going back, when I interviewed you, let's hark back to those days in broadcasting. There's only one thing I saw in you. That's why I got very interested. It
What is
was
that?
the way you spoke relative to normal high school and or college students. It was totally different. That's why I got interested, and eventually I gave you two offers actually. That's what I saw in you. That was the X factor, the way you spoke. And I mean, even now, the way you speak now, I mean, that's an X factor for you. Can I mention the name of that student of mine in
Yeah, yeah.
2003? Yuli Dulzura, just in case you're listening right now. By the way, he restores cars on the side. So he's restoring a Mercedes Benz now and the Lancer box type. Anyway, Yuli, just in case you're listening to RV and I, that's it. That's what you should do. Get to know the company you're applying for and the job and see what happens. You have to show that you're knowledgeable about those things. When I was asked to give training to a cement corporation, and there are 4 or 5 cement companies here in the Philippines. So I was asked to do training, and the first thing I said was, "I grew up practically with your products." Because when our house was being built, when I was in elementary school, we used your cement. And I kept on saying so many things about their product, which they didn't even know because it was owned by another company before. So they were actually surprised. And I guess that did a trick. That got me a lot of contracts from that company. I guess the only extra effort I did was to research on that company. And I realized that, I know so much about their product. What about references? Do you give out references in your CV?
Yeah, up front. Because I know they're going to ask for it anyway, so I put
Uh-huh.
it there.
So you give it out immediately.
Yeah, immediately. Yep.
Uh-huh. Now, a lot of people ask me this question. What's the difference between a CV and a resume?
By nature, CV has to be typically long and detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And a resume, actually, George, there's a trend in the US. I've been hearing a lot of people are doing one-page resumes, even for very
Uh-huh.
experienced, very senior people, because
Mm-hmm.
they're saying that beyond 2 pages, no one will bother to read it. So
Yep.
maybe maximum of 2 pages.
Very true. Right. I always say that. As a matter of fact, I always say this when you're a fresh graduate, you don't do a CV because you're not gonna put in their best in costume in grade one, right? Which is what they do nowadays. They give awards to everyone, to almost all students. Anyway, so resume is just, well, I guess a cursory enumeration of where you studied, and that's it. Because you don't have any experience yet. CVs are for those who are experienced. And my advice is always write an executive summary. That's your front page. So even if they don't bother reading your detailed CV, you still have that executive summary which they can base your qualifications on. That's what I do. Like me, for example, if I write down all the things that I did in my lifetime, it's going to take a book.
Absolutely.
So executive summary is the most important. But the thing is, it's so funny because sometimes when I give talks, so I send them my executive summary or CV. When I get introduced, they read the whole executive summary.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So now I always do this, and this is an advice for you budding speakers in the future. When you're asked to give a talk or a speech or whatever, write your own introduction and give it to the one who's going to introduce you. That's the best thing to do. Never let those who invited you write your introduction.
Yeah. But Georgian, now that you're saying that, I realize that the way they write their resume will also differ depending on how senior they are in the organization.
Uh huh.
And the same thing is true for an interview. Like I would imagine that for a first job,
Mm-hmm.
most people will just look for, hey, does this person know the basics?
Mm-hmm.
And are they trainable? Are they coachable? Are they obedient?
That is the most important thing. Are you coachable? Right?
But
Are you
if
open to that?
right, but if you're hiring a director, you don't necessarily want that. You
Mm-hmm.
want someone who's obedient. You want someone who's pioneering, challenging, innovative.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it depends on the stage of life that they're at, what kind of packaging they would like to have when they present themselves.
Well, normally, especially for experienced people, when you write down your experience, your job experience, you do not just write your position. What did you achieve in that position? That is very important. Like, I turned the company around from losing a venture to whatever. I think that's the best way to sell yourself. Show your achievements. I don't know if you agree with me as far as that is concerned, because those achievements are much better than just showing that you've been an executive vice president of so and so company, right?
And that's where you're raising a very important point, George, because I see some resumes where people write down their tasks, not their
Mm-hmm.
accomplishments. They would
Mm-hmm.
say something like, prepare the weekly report of this and that. And automatically, when I see a resume that just lists down tasks, I go, oh, okay, so that's
Yeah.
that's what they were doing. They were just going through the motions instead of
Uh-huh.
trying to reinvent something.
Precisely. That's that's why I'm not totally impressed with those kinds of resume. Like you, for example, if you're gonna write a resume, I would place that the thing I keep on saying about you, the youngest newscaster on television, on primetime TV. See, that's an accomplishment nobody else can match.
Yeah, but that was only for, it was very short-lived though.
But still, you got into prime time. See, with
Yeah,
Tina Monzon Palma,
with a lot of mistakes.
everybody commits mistakes.
Oh, George, I just remembered there's something that I learned from a class, from a coaching class actually.
Hmm.
How to tell if your interview is lying.
Uh-huh.
So I'll give you an example. Let's say you ask me, hey, what did you have for lunch? I mean, offhand, I probably won't remember, right? So what would happen is my eyes would point a certain direction while I think about the answer. Like, I think I had adobo
Hmm.
and rice. And then if you ask me another past-based question, like, okay, what about dinner last night? What did you have for dinner last night? Gee, I don't remember. What did I have for dinner last night? So if you've asked two questions, you know that their eye goes this way when they're trying to remember a fact.
Hmm.
But if I'm making up a fake answer, like, where were you last night? Oh, I'm not recalling an actual memory. I'm
Hmm.
making up an answer.
Making it, yeah, right.
The eye will tend to look in the opposite direction.
Really?
Yeah, so
Uh-huh.
so meaning the trick is to ask two past-based questions to establish, hey, where does your eye go when you're recalling a memory?
That's interesting.
And then you go and ask that sensitive question. So by the way, who were you with last weekend? And if if it's a secret, they won't have
Mm-hmm.
a memory to recall because they're making up
Uh-huh.
an answer.
Hey, let me try that out.
With whom?
That's
Who are you gonna
cool.
try
That's
this out on?
cool. That's cool. What about this one? When you're asked what's your biggest asset and your biggest liability, how do you do that?
Ooh, that is so difficult. Uh, well, definitely, like I would say instead of having a tangible asset, like
Mhm.
I would use a character trait as an asset.
Uh-huh.
Some, I don't know, just hypothetically speaking, this is not my real answer. I would say that my biggest asset is being someone who considers different angles before making a decision.
Hmm.
Although that's not me. That's really not me.
Okay, so what's your biggest asset?
I have
I'm
no
asked.
idea, George.
Uh, I'm trying to figure out where you're looking, at the left or right.
Well, if I were to answer that truthfully, I think my biggest asset is that I think I can form a good team.
Oh, that's good. And
Like,
I've seen that, and I must say, you form good teams.
cool. Now, what was the other question? What was the opposite of the biggest asset? The
Liability. What's your biggest
biggest
liability or
liability.
weakness? What's your biggest weakness?
So this is a true answer, but do I want to give a true answer where
Of
people
course,
can
you
act?
want to give a true answer. How can we teach? How can we teach our viewers if you don't do that?
Okay, so my biggest liability is I tend to hang on a little bit longer to people that I should get rid of,
Okay.
both in terms of work and in terms
Mm-hmm.
of love life.
Relationships and stuff. All right. Mm-hmm. At least I know you've hung on to me for quite some time now,
No.
so I guess you don't want to get rid of me.
No, what I mean, George, is like the exes. And
Uh-huh.
you know how I don't know if you remember, there were some people from our previous jobs that should have been fired,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess, like we gave them way too many chances.
That's true. That's true. Well, that's my weakness too. Like I always try to look at the good in a person, sometimes to a fault.
Mm.
See? yeah, I don't know if you might call that idealistic or whatever. I always try to tell myself, no, he's doing that because there has to be a reason for that. So there must be a good in him too. It has happened a lot of times. I think you've seen some in our past lives. So it's very difficult. But then again, sometimes you just have to put your foot down. That brings me to another question, putting your foot down. What about salaries? When you're when you're undergoing an interview and they ask you how much do you expect to get from your job?
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, George, typically, because nowadays the interviews are, someone would probably get interviewed by five or more people before they get
Mhm.
hired.
Uh-huh.
Typically, it's a question that should be asked by the recruiter.
Uh-huh.
So during the very first interview, the recruiter should ask that, like,
Save
okay,
them
what
the
are,
trouble. Right.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
because if it doesn't match, there's no point in going through
Precisely.
further interviews. So really, at when they get to me, I don't have to ask that question because I've more or less figured out that the recruiter knows they're within budget. But if someone were to ask me, like, what are your salary expectations? I might begin by saying, here's what I'm earning right now. And the salary that I would be willing to accept would depend on the kind of work that you will ask me to do. I will compare the scope. And at the same time, there has to be a compelling reason for me to transfer because I'm currently happy where I am. You know, like it's absolutely important for people to say they're happy where they are
Mm-hmm.
because if they sound desperate, you know, if they go, oh, you know, like I'm willing to accept this amount of, I mean, right away, it could be a red flag for, you know, for
Yeah,
some
that's right.
interviews.
Uh-huh. What about how much do you think I'm worth? Does
Oh,
that work?
like if I ask that question,
Uh-huh.
I I might hesitate if I'm talking to a recruiter. And the reason for that is because typically the recruiters, these are the people whose job is to look at JobStreet or LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
and they look at a lot of resumes day in and day out. And typically they're not managers yet. So
Uh-huh.
these are people who might find that to be arrogant if I ask
Mm-hmm.
them. But you know, if it's, you know, a high level
Mm-hmm.
interviewer rather, you know, like the CEO or something,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, George, that you could get away with it.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, you
Uh-huh.
could get away with it, given your, you know, your tone of voice and your confidence. Yeah, but it takes guts to ask that question, I would
Yep.
imagine.
Because I reckon if somebody asks me that question, or if I ask that question, if I give a low answer, I'm pegged at that already,
Yeah, yeah,
right? For all you
absolutely.
know, they're willing to give you double that,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
brings us to probably another topic in the future, negotiating skills,
Mm.
right? Which I also give. That's one of my workshops too, negotiating skills.
So, George, just in the interest of teasing them a little bit,
Uh-huh.
you know, like, could you share one tip maybe, like that you should keep in mind when you're in a negotiation?
Okay. All negotiations are not supposed to be win-win situations.
Mm.
Negotiating is compromising at the end. You have to make the other party happy too. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
he's not gonna let you go or get away with murder, right? So you have to be ready for that, and that's how you negotiate. But there's a misconception that negotiating is negotiating from a weakness or whatever. Like it's just like begging already. You negotiate on equal terms. Okay, these are my parameters. What are yours? Maybe we can meet halfway. It's always that way. We can talk about it in a future session, but that's how it is. It's really very important to realize it's always a win lose situation. Eventually, it's going to be a win win because I'm happy with what I got, and the other party is happy with what he got. You cannot win everything. That's for sure. That's just my take on negotiating because there are some who just quit right away because they couldn't get what they want. There are several ways of dealing with it. Even kids, even young kids, try to negotiate with their parents. So I'm pretty sure everybody knows the art of negotiating. It's just a matter of knowing exactly what we want, what we're willing to give up, and what we're willing to take. It's true what they say. It's lonely at the top. I had this CFO CFO client who realized that he thought it was going to be easy. He's CFO anyway, but it's not that easy. There are certain
Yeah.
decisions that he has to make that might make or break a company.
Hmm.
So negotiating is really very important, and negotiations start with the interview, the job interview, or whatever.
Yeah. George, I just remembered something interesting because you talked about the CEO. So there's an exam, a personality exam called the MBTI personality assessment.
Mhm,
And what they realized was there is a psychopath profile. So the
Like,
psychopath profile, if you're a serial killer, of course you could kill people
mhm,
without really having a conscious attack. The CEOs tend to have a psychopath profile, not because they kill people, but because they should be willing to make hard decisions
mhm,
and not be weighed down by their emotions.
mhm,
So things like, like company mergers or layoffs or cutting the budget of a particular department that's not relevant anymore, they should be able to make decisions like that. So in a sense, CEOs are psychopaths.
mhm.
They're not, yeah.
Maybe ruthless, not psychopaths.
Um, y- it, they should be ruthless, yeah, definitely. But I
Uh-huh.
guess someone just jokingly said, it's a psychopath profile.
Mhm. That's interesting. Well, that's true. You have to make those hard decisions. Like if you have to somehow close a company because it's not making money anymore. See, that's what happened to me prior to my training years. I had a company. It was a very good idea that we had. We had a very solid business model, so to speak. It's just that the technology didn't support what we were doing. So I had to make a decision. Should I close down that my company? And I had to do it. And, I lost weight. I couldn't sleep for several months because of that. But I had to, I even tried to bargain, negotiate with my employees. I asked them, would you be willing to do this? I'll take a salary cut. Everybody takes a salary cut, including myself. And then once we get over the hump, I'll pay you back what the company owes you. They didn't agree. They wanted a separation pay. So I had to let them go. Unfortunately, a lot of them couldn't get decent jobs after. So that's it. But that's how it is. It could break
Yeah,
your heart, but
yeah,
that's, I guess, a role of an executive to know what is going to benefit more people and what will hurt less people in the long run. It's a balancing act, which really, I guess, affects the mental state of a lot of executives. Anyway, so that's it for negotiating and nailing the interview, whatever. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that's one thing. First things first, what you're going to wear during the interview. Number two, be prepared. Know everything you need to know about the company you're applying to, and the position you're applying for. And I guess the third is relax. Relax, be yourself, and don't try to bullshit your way into a job. It's never,
yeah,
ever gonna
yeah.
happen.
Cool, cool.
Right.
And as usual, if you want to contact George for any
Mhm.
training sessions, you can look up his contact information right
Yeah,
here.
we're gonna post it.